Welcome to the recorded webinar on time and effort tracking requirements in the Summer Food Service Program, or SFSP. This training is designed to provide new and existing SFSP sponsors with detailed information on their responsibility to maintain time and effort records for employees whose wages are charged to the SFSP nonprofit food service account in order to demonstrate compliance with federal regulation. The topics that will be covered in this training include the background on why time and effort tracking is required when using SFSP funds to pay for employee wages, what are allowable labor costs in the SFSP, the difference between operational and administrative labor, and how to document labor costs using RIDE's time and effort template. RIDE has a responsibility to monitor a sponsor's use of federal dollars, in this case, SFSP reimbursement, to ensure that program funds are only spent on allowable costs for which the sponsor has received prior approval from RIDE as part of the budgeting process. The USDA provides guidance on allowable costs in FNS Instruction 796-2 Rev 4, and this instruction includes guidance on allowable labor costs. We will go into more detail on what allowable labor costs are in the next slides. Each year during SFSP renewals, RIDE reviews submitted budgets for the upcoming fiscal year. The entries for operational and administrative labor inform RIDE of the number of positions and the estimated number of labor hours the sponsor expects to charge to the SFSP account. RIDE reviews these entries to make sure the estimates are in line with the job duties, the size of the sponsor's program, and the meal services provided to participants. Each position listed in the budget whose salary will in part or fully be funded by SFSP funds must have specific SFSP duties included in the job description. During a program review, if the sponsor has paid for labor with SFSP funds, RIDE will review the documentation to ensure that federal funds have been used appropriately. Failure to maintain the necessary documentation may result in a finding and/or repayment. The documentation that sponsors must keep on file when using SFSP funds to pay for labor hours is described later in this presentation. When we talk about operational labor, we are referring to the labor costs associated with serving meals to eligible participants in the SFSP. Some examples of labor associated with serving meals are food preparation, including cooking meals, food procurement, specifically related to sponsors who self-prep any or all meals, including sourcing the lowest cost food or grocery supplier, and the physical purchasing of food from that supplier. Examples for sponsors that utilize a food vendor or caterer to provide meals could include ordering vended meals, serving meals, including the plating of food for participants, and cleanup. Sponsors may have several non-food service personnel who perform operational labor for the SFSP, such as teachers who serve meals or center directors who procure food or order meals. When RIDE reviews the sponsor's budget, we are looking for an estimated breakdown of how many hours a non-food service employee would spend performing SFSP operational duties a month, compared with their total monthly hours. The operational duties outlined in the budget must be supported by each position's job description. Administrative labor costs in the SFSP include duties required to administer the program. Examples of administrative labor costs include SFSP record keeping, claim consolidation, review, and submission on a monthly basis, completing and providing SFSP training, and monitoring. Monitoring is required for all sponsors, and monitoring duties include preparing for a review, conducting reviews, writing review reports, providing technical assistance, and reviewing and following up on corrective action responses. Sponsors must document labor costs paid for with SFSP funds according to federal guidelines. The minimum documentation required includes payroll records, time and attendance records, and time distribution reports, also known as time and effort reports. Each of these requirements will be discussed in the following slides. Sponsors must maintain payroll records for all employees whose salaries, including wages and benefits, are partially or fully paid for with SFSP funds. These employees' positions must be included in the yearly renewal budget along with the estimated number of hours they will work monthly performing SFSP duties. On review, RIDE will compare employees' positions listed in the yearly budget against employees' salaries that were paid for with SFSP funds. Using SFSP funds to pay for any employee position not listed in the budget may result in a finding and/or a repayment during a program review. In addition to payroll records, separate time and attendance reports must be maintained for all labor costs charged to the SFSP for hourly or salaried employees for full-time, part-time, and per diem work. These reports must identify the total number of hours worked by the employee, not just the time worked performing SFSP duties. For example, if a part-time employee works for 5 hours a week performing SFSP duties and works a total of 20 hours per week for the organization, the time and attendance report would be reflective of the full 20 hours per week and would support the organization's payroll records. At a minimum, the time and attendance reports must include the start time, end time, and absences. The report must be prepared in a timely manner and coincide with the employee's pay period. For employees with fixed start and end times, the time and attendance report must be prepared daily for all periods of absences beyond normal meal and break periods. For employees with variable start and end times, the time and attendance report must be prepared daily. Unless required by the institution, employees with established start and end times are not required to complete daily sign-in and sign-out sheets. At the discretion of RIDE, daily sign-in and sign-out sheets may be required for employees with variable start and end times, unless prohibited by a negotiated labor management agreement between the institution and its employees. Time distribution reports, or time and effort reports, establish the portion of labor costs that may be charged to the institution's nonprofit food service account as program labor. Sponsors must use a daily log or other time distribution method to verify the labor charges to the SFSP account. As in the previous example, where an employee works 5 hours per week on the SFSP, but 20 hours per week for the organization overall, the time and effort report is where the 5 SFSP hours are documented as they occur. This represents the allowable portion of overall payroll for this employee that can be charged to the program. The requirements for the time distribution reports are listed on this slide and the following slide. These reports must be completed by all employees, both full-time and part-time, and must account for the total activity for which each employee is compensated. The portion of the labor costs charged to the institution's nonprofit food service account must be allocated based on the number of hours actually worked for program and non-program activities and within the program for administrative and operating cost labor. A separate report for each employee is required. The reports must reflect an after-the-fact determination of the actual activity of each employee. Budget estimates and time studies of any kind are not acceptable documentation. Time should be reported in 15 to 30-minute intervals, but no less than 15-minute intervals. For proprietary and nonprofit institutions, the reports must be prepared at least monthly and coincide with one or more pay periods. See 2 CFR 230, Appendix B 8M2D for more information on nonprofit reporting requirements. For public institutions, monthly time distribution reports are required for each employee that works on program and non-program activities when the employee's compensation is charged at a direct cost. In all cases, time and attendance along with time distribution reports must be completed by the employee. They must be signed and certified as true and correct by the employee and by a responsible supervisory official having first-hand knowledge of the activities performed by the employee during the period covered by the reports. If your organization does not currently have a system to document time and attendance or time and effort for SFSP labor, you may develop your own log or use RIDE's time and attendance / time and effort log template. This template meets all record-keeping requirements for documenting time and effort for federal programs. Sponsors can choose to record time and effort electronically and print the completed form for signatures, or may print blank copies of the template and complete the form by hand. Sponsors may modify the template to meet their needs, but any modifications must be sent to RIDE for review and approval prior to implementation. Time and attendance forms must be maintained even if you do not use RIDE's template. The time and attendance / time and effort log is shown on this slide. Each section that is marked with an asterisk indicates a required field. If your center maintains time and attendance documentation separately, you are not required to complete the time and attendance section of this form. However, those records should be available to reviewers during a program review. For each day of the month an employee performs SFSP duties, record the number of hours which were SFSP operational, i.e. cooking meals, serving meals, cleanup, purchasing food, taking meal counts, etc. In the second column, record the number of hours that were SFSP administrative, for example, record keeping, training employees, monitoring sites, consolidating meal count sheets for the monthly claim, oversight for the program, etc. In the last column, enter the total number of daily hours worked. For example, if the typical day is 8 hours, you would enter 8 in this column. The template will calculate the monthly total hours for each column at the bottom of the Excel spreadsheet, the cells highlighted in green. If you are using this template to record time and attendance, record the time in and time out absent notation on the right-hand side of the template. At the end of the month, after the hours have been entered for time and effort, the completed sheet must be printed out and signed by both the employee and their supervisor or an authorized representative of the employer. This documentation must be maintained by the sponsor for a minimum of 3 years plus the current year and must be available to RIDE during an SFSP review. The document must be hand-signed or electronically signed. Typing the name of the employee and/or supervisor is not acceptable and could result in a finding during a review. The section under the signatures labeled Labor Cost Charge Calculator will calculate the total labor costs, for example, operational and administrative, that can be charged to the SFSP. The following slides show examples of what this calculator will look like for hourly versus salaried employees. This section does not need to be printed out and is for the sponsor to use for recording. If the options in this calculator do not meet all of your needs, you can make revisions and submit them to RIDE for approval or contact your RIDE program specialist and discuss what adjustments you would like for the calculator. This slide is an example of what an hourly employee's monthly time and effort sheet may look like. This employee only performs SFSP operational duties, so the admin column is left blank. Note the total hours at the bottom of the time and effort columns, 18 SFSP hours and 48 total work hours for the month. In the labor cost charge calculator, hourly is selected for this employee, which prompts the hourly rate to be entered in the next cell, which for this employee is $15 per hour. Once this is entered, the total operational SFSP wages for the month will be calculated automatically, and the percent of their monthly wages attributed to the SFSP will appear in the green cell to the right. If the sponsor charges benefits to the SFSP, this would be the percentage that could be applied for this employee for this month. This slide is an example of what a salaried employee's monthly time and effort sheet may look like. This employee performs both SFSP operational and administrative duties, so both columns are filled out according to how the employee worked. Note the total hours at the bottom of the time and effort columns. In the labor cost charge calculator, salaried is selected for this employee, which prompts the monthly salary to be entered in the next cell, which for this employee is $3,500 per month. Once this is entered, the total operational and administrative SFSP wages for the month will be calculated automatically, and the percent of their monthly wages attributed to the SFSP will appear in the green cell to the right. If the sponsor charges benefits to the SFSP, this would be the percentage that could be applied for this employee for this month for each category.